Picture this. It's 1788. A massive Austrian army, 100,000 soldiers strong, marches into the night, ready to face their sworn enemy, the mighty Ottoman Empire. Cannons loaded, bayonets sharp, hearts full of patriotic fury. And then, before the Ottomans even show up, this army looks their enemy dead in the eye, and the enemy is themselves. So they attack. They open fire on each other in the dark because they were wasted. Yeah, this is the Battle of Karánsebes, the only battle in recorded history where the winning side didn't have to fire a single shot, mostly because the losing side did all the work for them. The Ottomans showed up 2 days later to an empty field, littered with thousands of dead Austrians, took one look around, shrugged, and just walked in. And the reason for all this? Booze. Glorious, disastrous, army-ending booze. Buckle up. So let's set the stage. This is the Austro-Turkish War, and the Holy Roman Emperor Joseph II decides he wants a piece of the crumbling Ottoman Empire. Fair enough. Everybody was doing it. So he assembles a truly enormous army near a little town called Karánsebes in modern-day Romania. Now here's the first problem. The Austrian Empire was a beautiful, chaotic patchwork of like a dozen different ethnicities. You had Austrians, Germans, Hungarians, Croats, Serbs, Czechs, Italians, Poles, and a bunch of guys who honestly weren't sure what they were. And critically, they did not all speak the same language. So you've got an army of 100,000 men who, in an emergency, could not actually communicate with each other. Remember that. It's going to matter. A lot. So this magnificent, multilingual, completely unable to talk to itself army marches out into the night to scout ahead and find the Ottomans. And leading the charge is the cavalry. The horse guys, the elite scouts. They cross a river called the Timish, they poke around in the dark, and they find nothing. No Ottomans. Zero enemies. What they do find, however, is a group of local Romani people who have set up a little pop-up shop, and they are selling one very specific product, barrels of schnapps. Now, if you are a tired, cold, scared cavalry soldier in 1788, and you have found no enemies, but you have found several barrels of high-proof liquor, what do? You do the responsible, professional, military thing. You buy all of it, and you start drinking immediately on duty in enemy territory. So these cavalry scouts are just getting absolutely hammered in a field, party of the century, and then, plot twist, a group of Austrian infantry, the foot soldiers, comes marching across the same river. And they see their buddies, the cavalry, having what appears to be the greatest night of their lives. And they want in, but the cavalry guys, they're drunk. And when you're drunk, you get territorial. This is my schnapps. So the cavalry refuse to share. The infantry, understandably, are furious. We walked all the way out here and you won't give us one drink? Tensions rise. Words are exchanged. And because, say it with me, nobody speaks the same language, the words exchanged quickly escalate into shoving, then punching. Then someone builds an actual makeshift fortification of barrels to protect the precious alcohol. An army at war building a fort to defend liquor from its own side. The escalation. Somebody yells the wrong thing. Okay, so it's now a full-blown drunken brawl. And at some point in this chaos, one soldier, nobody knows who, and honestly, he probably didn't survive to explain himself, decides to be funny, or panic, or both, and he fires his gun into the air. Now, imagine you're a soldier. It's pitch black. You're in enemy territory. You're expecting the Ottomans at any second, and suddenly you hear gunfire. What is your very first terrified thought? The Turks are here. And this is where the language barrier turns a bar fight into a national tragedy. Some of the soldiers, reportedly German-speaking officers, start screaming, "Halt! Halt!" to stop the chaos. But a huge chunk of the army did not speak German. And to the non-German ears, "Halt! Halt!" sounded a lot like Allah, Allah. So now you have thousands of terrified, drunk soldiers who genuinely believe they can hear the Ottoman army chanting as they charge. The panic is instant and total. Men start running, men start shooting, at shadows, at bushes, at each other. And here comes the cherry on top. An officer trying to stop the fleeing horses shouts commands in German, and a general riding up in the dark hears the commotion and assumes the worst. He believes the Ottoman cavalry is charging straight at him, so he does his duty. He orders his artillery to open fire. Let me be very clear about what just happened. An Austrian general just ordered Austrian cannons to fire directly into the Austrian army. And they did. Cannonballs start ripping through the darkness. The horses, already spooked, completely lose it and stampede through the camp, trampling everyone. Soldiers waking up in their tents hear cannon fire, screaming and hooves, and they grab their rifles and start blasting into the dark at whoever's closest, which again is their own guys. It is now a self-sustaining chaos machine. Every soldier who fires convinces another soldier the enemy is real, so that guy fires too, which convinces the next guy, and on and on. The army is not fighting the Ottomans. The army is fighting the concept of the Ottomans. And the concept is winning by a landslide. And in the middle of all of this, the emperor himself, Joseph II, is right there, in the camp. And in the stampede, His Imperial Majesty gets knocked clean off his horse and into the river. The literal Holy Roman Emperor soaking wet in a ditch as his own army tears itself to pieces over a schnapps dispute. You cannot script this. History already did. By the time the sun came up, the survivors slowly realized the horrible truth. There were no Ottomans. There never had been any Ottomans. They had spent the entire night in a life-or-death struggle against themselves, and they lost. Badly. The army was so shattered, so humiliated, and so scattered that it simply abandoned the position entirely and retreated. And here's the punchline of the whole cosmic joke. 2 days later, the actual Ottoman army, the real one, the one they'd been looking for, finally arrives at Karánsebes, and they find a completely empty battlefield covered in abandoned supplies, wrecked equipment, and, by some estimates, up to 10,000 dead and wounded Austrian soldiers. Casualties inflicted entirely by the Austrians, on the Austrians, for the Austrians. The Ottomans, who did nothing but show up late, captured the town without a fight. It was the easiest victory in the history of warfare. They didn't win the battle, they won the raffle. Now, I have to be honest with you, some historians squint at this story and go, hey, the earliest detailed version showed up decades later. Maybe the casualty numbers got a little inflated in the retelling. And sure, maybe 10,000 is generous, but the core of it? An enormous multilingual army, a river of schnapps, a word that sounded like the wrong word, and a night of friendly fire so catastrophic the enemy strolled in unopposed? That absolutely echoes through the history books for one simple reason. It is the single most human thing an army has ever done. Because at the end of the day, they didn't lose to superior tactics. They didn't lose to a bigger army. They lost because a bunch of scared, tired guys found free alcohol, refused to share it, and then got so confused in the dark that they decided the scariest enemy on the battlefield was the sound of their own officers trying to calm them down. So the next time you think you had a rough night, just remember, you have never, ever lost a war to yourself over a barrel of schnapps. And if you enjoyed watching an entire empire faceplant in slow motion, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button and join us here at Sticky Storm, where history is always this stupid, and we mean that with love.